them a little later. But the topic on Saturday was about settling. It was about something that I think is pretty common to most of us. And I think all of us will admit that we've been there before, where there is a place in your life that is beneath or less than where you either thought you should have been, or a place that God had for you, and then you just decided to settle there. So the story that we're looking at is in the book of 2 Samuel, and it's in chapter 9. And it is the story, it's one you're probably familiar with, you may have heard before, but it's the story of David kind of showing kindness to this man named Mephibosheth. So when we pick up in chapter 9, David is inquiring if there is anyone left of Saul's lineage or Saul's family that he may show kindness to. And when he asked this question, he's asking because you may know that David and Jonathan were like best friends. They were so close that the Bible said they were like brothers, and they had a very, very close relationship. And during their relationship, Saul, who was Jonathan's father, was jealous of David for a lot of reasons. And he decided that he wanted to kill him. And when he put out this thing to kill David, Jonathan helped David to escape from being killed. And he agreed to, and Jonathan knew at that point that things would not probably fare well for him in his life, but he made David commit to him a promise that he would show kindness to his lineage forever and ever. So that was something that Jonathan made David promise him, and David kept, and he made this promise. So now years down the line, this promise for some reason is coming back to David's memory. And David is asking now, is there anybody left of his lineage that we can show kindness to? And he asked this young man named Ziba. And Ziba is he was one of Saul's servants. And so Ziba says, yes, there's somebody actually. He says, one of Jonathan's sons is still alive. He's crippled in both feet. And so David sends for the guy for him to come. And his name is Mephibosheth. So when the story picks up, Mephibosheth is lame in both feet. Lame in both feet is symbolic of being unable to move, unable to make any movement, see any progress in your life. If you are lame in both feet, that means you can't walk, okay? So you need assistance to do everything that you really need to do. You're not really self-sufficient, so to speak. And the Bible says that he was living in this place called Lodabar. Lodabar means a place of no pasture. It means no growth, no word, no communication. It was literally translated the land of nothing. And so here you have this man, Mephibosheth, and he's living in this land that is literally the land of nothing. It's a place where nothing is growing, nothing is happening, nothing is thriving, nothing is prospering. And that he's in this place and he's lame. He can't move. He can't see any growth. He can't, have things happen for him in this place. And the reason I think this is a good story to look at, because many of us can find ourselves in this predicament from time to time. We can feel that we are stuck in a place where things aren't happening for us. Year after year, there's no real progress. Year after year, things are not blossoming. Things are not growing, and you feel yourself stagnant. Being lame for both feet means you're stuck in the same place year after year after year after year. You can't move on your own. You can't really make things happen for yourself on your own. And that's what's happening with Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth is lame in both feet, but he's lame in both feet in this land of nothing. And if you have to be stuck somewhere, nobody wants to be stuck in the land of nothing. No one wants to be stuck in a place where nothing's happening, where nothing's prosperous and nothing's growing. And that's where this man is. But this is the interesting part. He is Saul's grandson. So he is the only living heir of the king, which means he doesn't have to be in this place. He's in this place, but he doesn't have to be in this place. He doesn't have to stay in this place. So Mephibosheth is living in a land of nothing. Nothing's happening, nothing's growing, nothing's prosperous, and he's stuck in this place. He's the man with no feet. Lame in both feet, sorry. And so he is not growing, he's not prospering, but the thing is, he doesn't have to be there. And so what he's doing, he's staying in a place that is beneath who he is. He is staying in a place that is less than what God designed for him. He is staying in a place year after year that is beneath what God has made available for him. So I believe that we can probably assume at this point Mephibosheth has settled. He's gotten in this place of Lodabar, this place of nothing, this low place, and he's settled. He's pretty much made his home there. And he's gotten comfortable there. So much so that we'll see later that his identity is now wrapped up in this place. And so he's gotten very comfortable here. But this is not, and I want to go back to a little bit about the beginning of Mephibosheth's story and look at how he got here, because if we're going to learn something about not settling, if we're going to learn something about not being stagnant in a place where nothing is happening for us, then we want to look at how did he get here? How did his life transition to this place? And so we need to look at back at 2 Samuel chapter 4. And in 2 Samuel chapter 4, verse 4, it says this. It says, Jonathan, son of Saul, had a son who was lame in both feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel. His nurse picked him up and fled, but as she hurried to leave, he fell and became disabled. His name was Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth was he was 5 years old when the news came out that his father Jonathan and his grandfather Saul had died. And so what happens is whenever a king would die, all of his lineage would be, whenever a king would be defeated or died, all of his lineage, not died, defeated, all of his lineage would be killed off. So there was no rightful heir to the throne. And that's what was happening here. So once they had died and the enemies came in to begin to look for any of their lineage. And so the nurse wanted to save his life. So the nurse grabbed him up and took off running with him, but dropped him. And so Mephibosheth fell and he became crippled. And look at this crippling of his life at 5 years old ends up detouring his destiny, kind of took him on a detour. And so he was a child. He wasn't born lame. He wasn't born this way, but somebody mishandled him. And so the first point I want to drive home, that if you're going to get to a place where you're not settling in your life, you're not settling for less than, you're not settling beneath what God has for you, the first thing you have to do is release the disappointment about who dropped you. You have to release the disappointment about who dropped you. This lady was not even an enemy. She was his caretaker. She was a nurse. And if you look at this is a person who came in his life to nurture him, came in his life to protect him, but it's ultimately the person who disabled him. You got to think about that. Many of us have that person in our lives. We have this person because we're walking around carrying this disability in our lives. Because early on, if we look back, some of us, it was a father that wasn't there or mistreated you. For some of us, it was a mother who, worked too much, didn't pay you any attention. Some people were molested as a child. Some people were raped. Some people had things happen with them. They were abused. Some people were abused in a relationship. And they are walking around with a disability because someone who came into your life to protect you, to care for you, to be there for you, they ended up mishandling you and they dropped you. And now you have a disability. You have a scar. You have something that changed the trajectory of your life, something that changed the trajectory of the path that you were on. And many of us have never been able to let that go. Many of us have never been able to let go of the thing that happened to us in our past that put us in the position that we find ourselves in today. Many of us say, you know what, if I went and got pregnant when I was in high school, I would have went to college and I would have been the doctor, lawyer I thought I would have been today. If I would have had the money when I grew up, my dad would have been there. I wouldn't have had to get a job in high school and I wouldn't have had to do this. Many people, when you talk to them and you begin to survey their lives and their stories, many people will begin to share with you stories about a person who dropped them in their past. Something happened to him, somebody who was in their life that they thought was a friend, that they thought loved them, that they thought cared for them, that they thought would be there for them, ended up mishandling them. And then that person dropped them. And what happens is they move forward with this disability. Many of us are not able to move forward holding on to this disability because it does alter the way that you move in your life. But that doesn't mean that you cannot still have and cannot still attain what God has for you. And so what happens is we walk around with that pain and that disappointment and that hurt, and we harbor those feelings inside, that what if, or if this wouldn't have then, if this wouldn't have then. And what happens is those feelings and those emotions keep us from being able to embrace what is. what is available to us. Maybe it doesn't look like the way it would have looked. Maybe it doesn't look like what could have happened. Maybe it doesn't happen the same exact way, but that does not mean it is not still available for you. And one of the things that God wanted to show me in this story, the second point I want to bring in, if we're able to ever begin to not settle, to stop settling, not only do we have to release the disappointment about who dropped us, but we have to be able to change our perception about our disability and realize that our disability actually delivered many of us. That thing that you thought altered your life and took you off of your path, for many of us, it was actually the thing that delivered us into the destiny or into the path that God has for us. And I'm going to show you this. When Mephibosheth is dropped, right, and he becomes disabled, they were actually coming to kill him. And so we look at it, well, yeah, he's disabled, but he's alive. He didn't die. He didn't get killed. And so some of us, if we look back at our lives and we look back at the things that happened, yes, I may have come out this way, but at least I'm still here. At least I'm still alive. I remember if you were at Beachella and I pulled a card out of the jar and it says, what was one of the things I'm the most grateful for? What was one of the things in my life? I think it said that I was the most grateful for happening. And I mentioned my daughter, because at 24, it wasn't a happy occasion at the time, you know, and I felt like it altered the trajectory of my life. I felt that having a baby at that time changed the path that I was on. I thought that I would have gotten to where I needed to get sooner had I not had to stop and take care. But I'm telling you, what God showed me is that having her actually delivered me. It actually delivered me from the path that I was on. And because me having to care for, me having to consider, me having to be there for someone else changed my decision making. It changed the way I looked at life and I approached life, because it wasn't just me anymore. It was me and someone else. And so actually what I looked at as a detour actually was really my deliverance. She actually kept me, because had I not had her, ain't no telling where I would be today, if I would be here today, just because of the path I was on in terms of decision making, in terms of judgment. I didn't have anybody else to think of. It was just me. I was young, wild, and free. And so without having her, ain't no telling where I would have been. And so he says that Mephibosheth, if he gets caught up in the fact that he's disabled, he will miss the fact that he's not dead, you know? And so many of us have to change the perspective about the thing that happened to us. Sometimes the thing that happened to you qualified you for the place that God has called you to. I'm telling you, most of what y'all know, I teach a lot from experience. I have so many stories to tell, so many things that have happened in my life that I can draw from as experiences to help minister to someone else, so that I'm not just giving you the story out of a book. I'm telling you how it actually works in real life, in real time. And I believe that many of us, those stories and those things that we encountered in our lives, they equip us for the call. They equip us for the journey that we're on. And so I think that we have to begin to change our perspective about the disability and realize that many of us, that disability, that being dropped, that thing that happened to you early on is actually what delivered you, and obviously what equipped you for the path and the call that God has on your life right now. And so that's one of the pieces out of Mephibosheth's story that was very interesting, because I believe many of us look at that disability as a disqualifier. When many of us look at that thing like, oh, because that happened to me, that I may not get to this place, or this may not happen for me, or I could have, or I should have, not really realizing that you were not disqualified. Hey, Warner, you were not disqualified because of that thing that happened in your life. And so that's the third point. If you want to stop settling outside of your seat, if you want to stop settling for less than what God has for you, you have to realize that your disability didn't decide your destiny. You did. Because many of us mentally disqualify ourselves. And I believe that's what, this part I'm inferring, because Mephibosheth gets into Lodabar and he stays there. We don't know how he got there, because the Bible doesn't tell us specifically how he got there. But in between 2 Samuel chapter 4, when he's dropped and he's disabled, he's 5 years old. Then we pick up the story in chapter 9. He's still living, he's living in Lodabar. He's been living there a very, very long time. And he stays there. And the reason I say he stays there is because Mephibosheth is the only living heir of the king Saul. The way that the law worked at that time, and we've seen it happen in numerous stories, when the heir comes forward and say, hey, here am I, I'm alive, here I am of the lineage of Saul, the heir is the rightful heir. He's the rightful person to sit on the throne. But for some reason, Mephibosheth never steps forward. He never comes and identifies himself. He never comes and claims his seat. He never comes and says, hey, Saul is my grandfather. I know y'all thought y'all killed me, but you didn't. Here I am. Let me get on that throne. He never does that. He stays in that place. And I believe many of us do that. We mentally disqualify ourselves because we look at ourselves in light of our disability. Although God looks at us in light of our destiny. God looks at what he put into you. God looks at what he called you to, what he created you for. But many of us are allowing our disabilities to disqualify us. And your disability can be anything. Like I said, it could be not having a college degree. It could be being a teen mom. It can be filing bankruptcy. It can be being raped at an early age. Whatever that thing is that happened to you, that you feel that people are looking at you, seeing it when they look at you, that disability does not disqualify you. And what happens is many of us don't get up to reclaim what is rightfully ours. Many of us don't stand up to reclaim what belongs to us because we've mentally disqualified ourselves. We say, you know what, I can't get that job because, I ain't got a college degree. Says who? Favor is not fair. We say, you know what, they're not going to choose me for that. I'm not going to be able to run for office because I remember back, child, one time I got arrested for doing whatever. We don't even try because, again, we disqualify ourselves. We begin to take ourselves out of the running. We don't apply. We don't even go for it. We don't give God the opportunity to add his supernatural into your life. We just sit back and say, oh, well, I won't even try. But that's what we have to begin to do. We got to stop looking at ourselves in light of our disability. And so what happens is here is very interesting because this, I believe, happens to many of us. What we have to also notice is that disqualifying yourself causes others to dismiss you. When you disqualify yourself mentally and you don't try, you begin to be dismissed by others. People don't even consider you a factor. People don't even consider you in the game. And it's interesting that Mephibosheth has settled in Lodabar, right? He's living there. He's living in the land of nothing. But it's no secret who he is or what he's doing. Because when David says, is there anyone of the lineage of Saul? They didn't have to say, hold on, let us go check and find out. They instantly knew where he was. They knew where he was and they knew who he was. They knew that he was the heir to the king and they knew he was living in a low place. And they was like, he over there. And that's what people will do. They will leave you right where you are. If you don't think you're qualified, who am I to go and make you get in a position, make you step up? Many of us have sat in places where we've settled and other people have discounted you. They don't even consider you part of the options because they know, listen, you over there, you've settled in this place and then you're mad because nobody's picking you. You're mad because nobody's choosing you. You're mad because nobody's calling you to be a part of and to put you in the game. You got to stand up and get up out of that low place and you got to let people know who you are. And what happens is these people know exactly who he is. They know who he is. It's not just him. They know who he is. And they know, they says, hey, Ziba said, yeah. And this is the funny thing. When he says, is there anybody that is still alive of Jonathan's house that I may show favor to? Let me tell you exactly how Ziba says it. This is what's funny about it. Ziba says, yeah, one of Jonathan's sons is still alive. He's crippled in both feet. Don't even call the man by name. Don't even call his name. They're like, yeah, the crippled one. Because again, when you begin to label yourself and identify yourself and take yourself out of the game because of your disability, other people will dismiss you because of that same disability. They will leave you right out of it. Yep, that's the one crippled over there. They're not doing anything. That's the one who, dropped out and sat over there and just, whatever. And the thing is, it is up to you to make that change. He has literally been dismissed from his royal lineage. He is royalty. He's not just any old dude laying out there. He is actually royalty. He is a rightful heir to the throne, but nobody is treating him like that because he isn't treating himself like that. He isn't honoring himself. He isn't recognizing who he is and standing up in the fullness of his own identity. And so he can't expect other people to treat him any different. When you decide to settle beneath your birthright and when you begin to settle in low places, people will treat you accordingly. People will treat you just like you show up. People will respond to you just like you show up. I know, listen, people don't do it on purpose. People always be like, oh, you ain't even called me about this. I'm like, I'm not saying anything about you because you don't even stand up in that space. You know, if you want room and if you want a space, if you want your space in that room, you got to let people know I do that. Hey, that's what I do. That's who I am. You people don't even say that. You don't tell nobody you a speaker, but you want me to remember you a speaker. You don't tell nobody you know an event planner or you are an author or you or whatever. You don't stand up and acknowledge and own fully who you are, but you want other people to come and identify that for you. No, you have to do it first. You have to stand up. You have to recognize who you are. And then this is the thing I love about this. Right. So David sends for the people to get him. Right. And so when David sends for them to get him, they go and get him. And when he comes instantly, David looks at him and he says, Mephibosheth, exclamation point. He calls him by name. So although the people have dismissed him, the king knows exactly who he is when he sees him. And the king calls him by name. And his name, Mephibosheth, means the one who will remove the sorrow. The one who will remove the sorrow. And so he makes a declaration into his life. You are the one who will remove the sorrow over your lineage. Because again, Saul is the first king of Israel. And you got to remember his lineage is going a certain way until Mephibosheth is the only one left. And it's like the family dies off with the lame guy. You know, and so some of us, we are the ones that when you step up fully, when you own who you are, when you stop settling for less, you will be the one that removes the shame from your family's lineage. You will be the one that reclaims what rightfully belongs to you and your family and your birthright and your last name or whoever you are. You know, you will be the one that stand up in that place, but you got to stand up and you have to own it. And so when Mephibosheth, when he calls Mephibosheth's name, he calls him up, and Mephibosheth goes, and David honors the first thing I want to say, David honors the promise attached to Mephibosheth's name by calling him by his God-given name. And so this is a declaration that he spoke over him. And this is the last point I wanted to make about that, about not settling outside of your seat, is that remembering that there is a promise for your life, regardless of where you're currently living. There is a promise attached to your life, regardless of where you may currently be living. He is currently living in Lodabar. He is living in a low place. He is living beneath, but that's not how his life has to end. That's not how his story has to unfold and end for him. And you have to remember that because of who you are, there is still promise and there's purpose attached to your name. It's attached to your identity. It's not about where you are. It's not about what you're doing. And we can never allow where we are to cause us to forget who we are. Many of us get stuck in this low place. We get stuck somewhere and we just think that I can't get out of this. I can't move forward. This is just what it is for me. And you watch everybody else. So you watch everybody else prosper, and you watch everybody else, you know, move forward in their lives. And you watch everybody else, you know, walk into success and walk into their dreams. And you sit there wishing and waiting and hoping and saying, when is it going to be my turn? When you stand up and you respond to the call of the king. The king is calling you forward. The king has called many of you forward already. And it is time for you to stand up and to respond to him. There was a promise that was spoken over Mephibosheth's life before he was even born. David makes this commitment to Jonathan before Mephibosheth was even born, before he was even a thought. He already had a promise, but because he wasn't there to hear it, he did not allow, he didn't have something to attach his faith to. And so he allowed his circumstances, he allowed his situation to define him. David comes to him, and when he greets him, he says, "Don't be afraid, for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table." He gives him a promise verbally to him. He tells him, listen, I'm going to show you kindness. And this ain't even about where you are and what you're doing. This ain't even about your disability. This is about a commitment I made to your father. This is not even about what you've done and how you've messed up and how you feel like, oh, I've been living in this low place. He says, I made a commitment before you were even born, and I'm going to honor that commitment. God is married and connected to the purpose that he placed in you. He says, before you were formed in your mother's womb, he knew you. There was purpose attached to you, and he is committed to seeing that purpose come to pass. He says, it's not even about what you've done in your life. It ain't even about the mistakes and mess ups. I knew you were going to do that when I formed you. I already knew that stuff was going to happen. I knew you were going to fall. I knew you were going to end up with these disabilities. I knew that. But that does not stop him from saying, I will restore to you. I will give back to you everything you think you lost when you failed. I will give back to you everything you think you were disqualified for when you thought you got out of line. He says, I will give it all back to you just because I made that commitment. And so Mephibosheth, it says he bowed down and said, what is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me? Mephibosheth's problem now is that he has settled for less for so long that it has literally robbed him of his identity. He does not even see himself as the grandson of the king. He sees himself as a dead dog. What do you see yourself as today? What do you see yourself when you look at yourself? What do you say as such as a what is me? You know, what do you identify yourself? Do you identify yourself as a abuse victim or a cancer victim or a dropout or a teen mom? What are you identifying yourself as today? He has allowed where he has settled to rob him of his identity. He does not even identify with who he is. He is still royalty. He's disabled, but he's still royalty. He's still a grandson of the king. And he has not allowed that to, he's not allowed his perspective to be shifted. And what I love about that, David doesn't even let that go. David doesn't even let him get away with that. David is like, listen, I'm not even worried about what you're thinking right now. David tells Ziba, right, the same gentleman that disqualified him, right, dismissed him, say, oh yeah, Jonathan got a son over there. Jonathan got a son somewhere who's lame in both legs, and he dismissed him and disqualified him. David tells Ziba, he says, yes, now you and your sons, now y'all work for him. He took the same person who had dismissed him, who had looked at him with scorn and said, oh, he's a non-factor. He took them, and now that man works for him. Again, not because of what he has done or where he has been living, but because of who he is. If you connect with who you are and you allow God to change your perception about who you really are, you not only will you stop living beneath your means, not only will you step out of that low place that you've been in for so long, but the very people that looked and dismissed you, that's why he said, I'll make your enemies your footstool. That's why he says, I've prepared a table before you in the presence of your enemies. The same people that disqualified now got to sit there and watch you eat. And some of them gonna have to go get your food for you. The same ones that looked at you and disqualified you, didn't think you were qualified to come to the king's table. Oh yeah, they identified you in light of, yeah, that's the old drug. That's the person that used to be on drugs. That's the one who didn't finish this. That's the one who got fired from that job. Those same ones, the Bible says, God says, I've gone to prepare, Jesus said, I've gone to prepare a table for you in the presence of your enemies. Those same people will sit right there and watch you eat, watch you succeed, watch you be blessed, watch you prosper in that same place. And I love, 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 love the way. Hello? Looks like my internet, something went. Oh. Can you still hear me? Can you still hear me? If you can hear me, somebody type yes. Because it says it's trying to connect. And this is the very end. I'm getting a spinning wheel on my broadcast. Oh, okay, good. Okay, see, I can hear me. Okay, thank you. I saw it's been going out. Okay. So last point, I'm at the end. Like, okay, stop at the end. So it says, the way it ends is verse 9. It says, and Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem because he always ate at the king's table. He was lame in both feet. And I love that, because although he's been in Lodabar for this time, and he's been in Lodabar, in this low place, for this very, very long time, the Bible says now he is living in a place of blessing. He's no longer in Lodabar. He's in Jerusalem. And it says he always ate at the king's table. So not only is he living in a place of blessing, he's seated in a place of honor. So now he is seated in a place of honor, living in a place of blessing. But this is the thing I love. He was lame in both feet. He still possesses the disability that he used to let define him. God does not have to take that thing out of your life. He does not have to rewrite your whole story. All he has to do is you just have to stand up and change your ending. And that's the thing I love about that. You don't have to continue to settle for that place. That thing that you think disqualified you, that thing that you think that took you out the game, that thing that you think that took you out, you will end up in your Jerusalem at the king's table, still having it. With that same thing, with that same story. Many people know me. They know the story. They know the path. I don't even try to dress it up. I tell you straight up who I am and where I've been. But I sit now at the king's table. I sit in rooms with people that if they knew me 20 years ago, probably wouldn't let me in the door. And I still sit at the table with my disability, with my same story, with all the challenges, with the things that I used to let define me. Because there was a period of time that I just was like, oh, I ain't going to be able to. I'm not. No. Now we're able to sit at the table, but God does not even take it away. He doesn't have that end of story where now he stands up and he walks. He sits at the table. He got servants. He got all his land back. He's living in Jerusalem, and he is living a good life, and he is still lame in both feet. I love that. And so the thing is that we cannot allow our disability to deliver us into a place that destroys our identity and causes us to deny our destiny. I'm going to repeat that again. We can never allow our disability to deliver us into a place that destroys our identity and causes us to deny our destiny. Never settle outside of your seat. I hope you enjoyed that this evening. I just wanted to kind of recap what we taught at Jeans and Beans. You know, you'll never teach it the same way twice, but I hope you were blessed and you got something out of it. Feel free to leave a comment, shoot me an email, or shoot me a message. Thank you so much for joining and jumping on here with me on this rainy Monday night. And I think the rain is why this broadcast kept going in and out. But thank you for sitting through with me. Have a good evening. Love you all. Until next time. Bye.